Why did the desert suddenly feel louder the moment she stopped moving? Maya Chen stood inside the medical tent, hands hovering over sterilized instruments she had already cleaned twice. The air smelled like antiseptic and dust. Outside, engines hummed. Boots scraped gravel. Life went on. But inside her chest, something was tightening, slow, deliberate, familiar. No one noticed at first. They rarely did. For 6 months, SEAL Team 7 had known her as the quiet one, the medic who didn't complain, didn't linger, didn't drink with them after missions. She showed up early, worked efficiently, and disappeared into herself when the work was done. Silence had become her uniform. Commander Jake Morrison watched her from across the tent. He'd served with medics before, loud ones, burned-out ones, gallows humor specialists who cracked jokes while stitching wounds. Maya was different. Her calm didn't feel learned. It felt enforced. Like something pressed down hard and never lifted. Rodriguez tried again that morning. He always did. A joke about terrible instant coffee. A comment about how the desert could kill enthusiasm faster than enemy fire. Maya gave the same polite half-smile, the one that never reached her eyes, and went back to checking her kit. Lieutenant Danny Torres noticed her hands. They were shaking. Barely, enough that you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. "You good, Doc?" he asked quietly, stepping closer. "You've reorganized that kit 3 times." She didn't look up. "I like being prepared." Her accent slipped through on certain words, soft, unplaceable. Another mystery the team had learned not to pry into. Torres lingered. "You know, we've all got baggage. Doesn't mean you carry it alone." For a fraction of a second, her breath caught. Just once. Then she closed the latch on the kit with a sharp click. "I'm fine." It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the truth. When Morrison began the briefing, the tent filled with bodies and quiet focus. Standard operation. High-value target, bomb maker. 15 clicks northeast. Dawn insertion. Routine. Until the coordinates appeared on the tablet. Maya's world narrowed to numbers. Her fingers went numb. Her hearing dulled. Somewhere far away, Morrison was still talking, but all she could see was a place she had buried and burned and sworn never to revisit. Her hands trembled harder now. She clasped them together, pressing until her knuckles went white. "Doc." Chief Williams' voice was low, concerned. "I'm fine," she said again, sharper this time. Then Morrison repeated the coordinates. And Maya froze. "Are you certain?" Her voice cut through the tent. Loud, clear, unmistakably afraid. Every head turned. Morrison blinked, confirmed. "Why?" Her chair scraped back as she stood too fast. Color drained from her face. "I need air." She didn't wait for permission. Outside, the sun hit her like a physical force. Maya braced herself against a concrete barrier, lungs burning as she fought to slow her breathing. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, the same colors, the same silence. Different ghosts. 5 years ago, she had stood on this soil wearing a different name, a different uniform, and a hope she didn't recognize anymore. She could still hear the explosion, still smell the smoke, still feel the weight of a dying man in her arms. Morrison joined her quietly. "That location," she said before he could speak, "I've been there." He didn't interrupt. "I wasn't a medic then," she continued. "I was a translator, first deployment. I thought words could fix things." Her mouth curved into something bitter. "They can't." Morrison offered reassignment, an out, no judgment. She refused without hesitation. "If I walk away now," she said, straightening her armor, "then everything I became after it means nothing." That night, alone in her bunk, Maya stared at the photograph she never shared, a younger version of herself, smiling, unbroken, standing beside people who didn't make it home. Tomorrow, she would return to where that girl disappeared and face what replaced her. What does it mean when the past recognizes you before you recognize it? The helicopter ride felt longer than it should have. Maya sat rigid, medical kit anchored between her knees, heart sinking with the thump of the rotors. 5 years ago, she'd sat in a similar seat, believing preparation equaled control. She knew better now. As they disembarked, the landscape unfolded exactly as memory had preserved it. Same ridgelines, same compound, same quiet threat hiding behind mud-brick walls. Her stomach tightened. Through her scope, she saw details the others couldn't, not because she was better, but because she had paid for them before. Underground areas, she said automatically. Morrison's gaze sharpened. She corrected herself too late. Then the target appeared, confirmation called in, mission progressing. But Maya couldn't stop watching the building. "Commander," she said, "I need to tell you something." She told them everything. The failed rescue, the outdated intel, the explosion, Sergeant David Kim bleeding out while she pressed hands she didn't trust against wounds she didn't understand. She told them about the moment he stopped breathing. And the moment she stopped believing she deserved to be anything but better. Silence followed. "That's why you became a medic," Williams said. Maya nodded, because ignorance kills just as surely as bullets. When she drew the map in the dirt, something shifted. Guilt turned into guidance, memory into intelligence. For the first time, her past wasn't just pain. It was protection. What happens when the person you mourn becomes the person you must save? The tunnel smelled the same: stone, dust, old fear. Maya moved forward, steady now. Each step grounded her. Then she saw him. Bound, beaten, alive. Her breath left her in a soundless rush. "That can't be," she whispered. But her hands knew, her eyes knew, her heart knew. If he was alive, then maybe her failure wasn't final. Maybe it had just taken longer to finish the story. They planned carefully, slowly, with restraint. This wasn't about revenge. It was about repair. What does redemption look like when it doesn't ask for applause? The extraction wasn't clean, nothing ever is. But it worked. When Maya finally knelt beside Sergeant Kim, cutting restraints with hands that no longer shook, he looked at her, recognition dawning through exhaustion. "You came back," he whispered. She swallowed. "I said I would." Later, as the helicopter lifted away, Maya sat in the same seat again. But the weight on her chest was gone. Some wounds don't close loudly. Some victories don't announce themselves. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did her hands stop, shaking the moment the ground came into view? The helicopter's shadow slid across the Afghan desert like a dark omen, stretching and breaking over rocks that had witnessed too many landings like this one. Maya Chen watched it through the open door, the wind tearing at her gear, the noise drowning out thought. Her pulse was loud in her ears, not fast anymore, just heavy, deliberate. This was the strange part. The closer they got, the calmer she became. 12 hours earlier, inside the medical tent, her body had betrayed her. Tremors, shallow breaths, a fear she hadn't been able to command. Now, strapped into a helicopter hurtling toward the very coordinates that haunted her dreams, everything inside her had gone quiet. Mission mode had taken over. Commander Morrison's voice cut through the headset. 2 minutes, final checks. Maya looked down at her hands, steady, scarred, familiar. These were not the hands she'd had 5 years ago. Back then they'd been softer, untested, convinced that good intentions could substitute for skill. These hands had learned what ignorance costs. They had learned anatomy under fire. They had learned how much pressure stops bleeding and how much doesn't. She secured her medical kit again, though it didn't need it. Not because she was anxious now, but because ritual grounded her. Order in a world that rarely offered it. Across from her, Lieutenant Torres kept stealing glances. He was young, sharp, still carrying that mix of confidence and unspoken fear that marked someone early in their career. He wanted to ask something. She could feel it. He didn't. The helicopter dropped altitude. Dust exploded upward as they touched down. Boots hit the ground. Commands whispered. The familiar choreography of insertion unfolded with quiet efficiency. Maya followed, last out, scanning automatically. Her training guided her steps, but memory filled in the gaps. Same terrain, same wind pattern, same sickening sense that this place remembered her too. As they moved toward the observation position, the compound emerged in the pale light of early dawn. Mud brick walls, low buildings, ordinary, innocent-looking. That illusion almost made her laugh. She remembered how deceptive it was, how the walls absorbed sound, how death hid in corners that looked harmless from a distance. They settled in, scopes up, breathing controlled. "Doc," Rodriguez whispered after a moment, trying to sound casual. "Anything we should know from a medical standpoint? Civilians, wounded, clinic signs." Maya adjusted her scope, zoomed in, counted figures, weapons, patterns. "No visible medical facilities," she said. Then, before she could stop herself, "But there are underground sections. They won't show from here." Silence followed, too long. Morrison turned his head slowly. Underground sections weren't in the intel. Maya felt it, the shift, a tension tightening around her like a noose she'd tied herself. She exhaled, slow. Compound construction in this region often includes storage basements. Tunnels aren't uncommon. It was true, just not the whole truth. She hated how easily half-truths still came to her. The target appeared soon after. Confirmation was clean, everything aligned with the briefing, on the surface. But Maya's focus drifted. She wasn't watching the man. She was watching the building behind him, the shadows along the wall, the subtle discoloration near the eastern side. Her chest tightened. She knew that wall. She knew where a body had fallen there, knew how long the blood had taken to soak into the dust. "Commander," she said quietly, before fear could talk her out of it, "there's something I need to disclose." Morrison didn't respond immediately. Then, "Go ahead." She didn't look at him when she spoke. She kept her eye to the scope, voice steady by force of will. "I've been here before, 5 years ago, different unit." No one moved. "I was a translator attached to the 82nd. We ran a rescue op on this compound. Hostages, contractors." Torres lowered his rifle slightly. Williams went still. "It went wrong," Maya continued. "The intel was outdated. The hostages were gone. What remained was a trap." Her throat tightened. She pushed through. There were explosives layered into the structure, secondary devices, snipers positioned for overlapping fire. Morrison's voice was low. "We didn't get any of that." "You wouldn't have," she said. "It was never in the report." "Because the report had ended early, with body bags." "We lost 4 soldiers in the breach," she said. 2 more after." She paused, not for effect, because the memory pressed too hard. "I was with Sergeant David Kim when the second device went off. He took shrapnel, massive bleeding." Torres frowned. "Doc, you weren't trained then." "I know." Her voice softened, almost broke. "I did what I could. Pressure, tourniquet, talking to keep him awake, but I didn't know enough. I made mistakes." She swallowed. "He died in my arms." No one spoke. "And while I was focused on him," she continued, "I missed the indicators, trip wires, irregular debris placement. 2 soldiers entered the building behind me." Her jaw clenched. "They didn't come back out." The desert felt suddenly too quiet. "That's why you changed specialties," Williams said finally. Maya nodded once. "I couldn't let that be the end of the story." She told them about the training, the sleepless nights, the relentless studying, how she'd learned medicine not as a calling but as penance. "Every life I save," she said, is an attempt to make up for the ones I didn't. Morrison crouched beside her, and the tunnels. She drew the map in the dirt, quick, precise, no hesitation. As she spoke, something unexpected happened. The fear eased. Not gone, but quieter. Her past wasn't chasing her now. It was standing beside her, finally useful. "This plan changes," Morrison said after studying the map. "Your intel saves us from walking into the same kill zone." Maya didn't feel relief, not yet. "I should have told you earlier," she said. "You told us when it mattered," Williams replied. "That counts." As the team repositioned, Maya stayed still for a moment, looking at the compound again. 5 years ago, she'd walked into this place believing she could help with words. Today, she carried knowledge earned the hard way. The guilt was still there, but now it had a direction. And for the first time since she'd seen those coordinates, Maya felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not forgiveness, but purpose. What happens when the place that broke you starts listening instead of screaming? The decision came quietly, the way most dangerous ones do. No raised voices, no dramatic pause, just Commander Morrison adjusting his grip on the dirt-stained tablet and saying, "We alter the approach," as if he were changing lanes on a highway instead of rewriting the margin between survival and disaster. Maya barely heard him. Her attention was fixed on the compound below, on the way the morning light slid across the walls and softened their edges. In the daylight, it almost looked peaceful, almost like the kind of place where nothing terrible could happen. That illusion had killed people before. She stayed low as the team repositioned, every movement deliberate. Her body remembered this terrain even when her mind tried to distance itself. She knew where loose stones would shift under weight. She knew which stretches of ground amplified sound. She knew where a man could bleed out unseen while the world kept moving. "Doc," Torres whispered as they crawled, "how are you holding up?" She considered the question. The honest answer was complicated. "I'm here," she said finally. It was enough. They reached the eastern approach without incident. From the outside, the wall looked identical to every other section of the compound. Same mud brick texture, same weathering, same sun-baked cracks. Maya raised her hand. "Here." Morrison paused. "You're sure?" She nodded. "Hidden door disguised as structural reinforcement, opens inward." "How do you know?" She didn't answer immediately. "Because that's where Sergeant Kim was trying to go," she said quietly. "He thought it might be an escape route." Morrison didn't press further. He trusted the weight in her voice. He examined the wall closely, then the ground, fresh scuffs in the dust, recent use. "Someone been moving through here," he murmured. Maya's chest tightened. "That means the tunnels are active." Which meant this place wasn't just a memory, it was still alive. They waited, listened. The compound breathed around them, distant voices, the scrape of metal, a muffled laugh that sounded too casual for a place built on cruelty. Maya focused on her breathing. "In, out, control what you can." Morrison signaled. The hidden door opened with a muted grind, revealing a narrow stone passage descending into shadow. The smell hit her first. Damp earth, oil, old smoke. Her stomach lurched, but her feet moved forward anyway. Inside, the temperature dropped. Sound changed. The world narrowed to stone walls and measured steps. Maya took point without discussion, guided by memory she had tried and failed to erase. "This passage splits ahead," she whispered. "Left leads to storage. Right goes toward the basement of the main building." "How confident are you?" Torres asked softly. "Enough to bet my life," she replied. They followed her. Each intersection tugged at something inside her. Here was where she'd crouched behind rubble, pressing useless gauze against wounds she hadn't understood. There was the turn she'd missed because she'd been too focused on not letting a man die. Now she saw everything. wires disguised as cracks, foot traffic patterns in dust, slight airflow changes that hinted at open spaces ahead. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was precise. They paused at a narrow staircase. Voices echoed faintly above. Maya lifted a hand, listened. Her old role surfaced instinctively. Dialect, inflection, meaning layered beneath words. 3 men, she whispered, discussing a transfer, something being moved tonight. They're nervous. Morrison's jaw tightened. That wasn't in the brief. No, Maya said, it wouldn't be. William's voice crackled faintly through the comms. We've got multiple vehicles approaching from the north, convoy style. The picture shifted again. Morrison didn't hesitate. We need eyes inside. Maya, take us up. She nodded. The staircase opened into a small chamber with narrow stone slats cut into the wall. An observation point. Maya remembered crouching here once, shaking, trying to understand chaos. She approached slowly now, carefully. Through the slats, the room below came into view. The bomb maker stood near a table, flanked by men Maya recognized from fragmented intelligence reports. Faces that had haunted briefing slides. Men whose decisions rippled outward into violence. And then she saw him. Bound thin, bruised. Alive. Her breath left her in a shallow, broken pool. No, she whispered. Morrison followed her gaze. What is it? Her hands trembled for the first time since insertion. That's Sergeant Kim. Torres frowned. Doc, you said. I know what I said. Her heart pounded hard enough to blur her vision. She knew the shape of his shoulders, the way he held himself even restrained, the insignia she'd stared at while begging him not to close his eyes. I checked for a pulse, she whispered, voice fracturing. I was sure. Morrison's voice was steady, grounding. Battlefield conditions aren't clinical. People survive things that look final. Maya shook her head slowly. I watched him stop breathing. And yet, Morrison said gently, he's breathing now. The room felt too small. The past collided violently with the present. If Kim was alive, then everything she'd built her identity around shifted. The guilt, the penance, the years of self-punishment. What if she hadn't failed the way she believed? What if her efforts had been enough, just not fast enough to save him from captivity? We have to get him out, she said. There was no hesitation now, just clarity. We will, Morrison replied, but not recklessly. She closed her eyes for half a second, centered herself. Then we do it right, she said. They'll move him through the main tunnel when the convoy arrives. Security will be focused outward. She crouched, drawing again in the dust, this time not just walls and passages but habits, patterns, timing. They always choose the widest tunnel for transfers, but there's a choke point here, she marked it. We intercept there, quiet, controlled. Morrison studied the map. Williams creates a distraction topside. And Rodriguez blocks the secondary exit, Maya added. They won't expect resistance underground. She looked up. I know how they think. I studied them for years. Not as enemies. As consequences. Morrison nodded. Then we trust you. As they prepared, Maya checked her medical kit one last time, not out of fear, out of respect. For the woman she had been, for the medic she'd become, for the man waiting below, unaware that the past was coming back for him, not to haunt, but to finish what it started. She took a breath. This time, she wasn't trying to undo history. She was answering it. What if redemption doesn't arrive as forgiveness, but as responsibility? The tunnel felt tighter as they moved, as if the earth itself had decided to lean in and watch. Maya led them without looking back. Her pace was careful, unhurried, not because she was afraid, but because she finally understood what haste had cost her once before. Every step mattered, every sound carried. She counted breaths, counted footfalls, counted the seconds between distant voices echoing through stone. This was no longer memory replaying itself. This was application. At the choke point she had marked, the tunnel narrowed just enough to force single-file movement. The ceiling dipped. The walls bore old scrape marks from equipment dragged through too fast, too loud. Maya stopped and raised a fist. "They'll come from that bend," she whispered. "Two guards front and rear, prisoner in the middle. They keep him upright to prevent collapse." Morrison nodded. Torres adjusted his grip. No one questioned her. That was new. They took positions. The tunnel swallowed them into shadow. Somewhere above, engines rumbled. The convoy had arrived. Maya's heart didn't race, it slowed. She remembered the moment 5 years ago when everything had sped up, when adrenaline had blurred detail and panic had disguised itself as urgency. She had mistaken motion for progress. Not today. Footsteps echoed. Low voices close. Maya closed her eyes briefly and listened past the words to the rhythm, the cadence of men who believed they controlled the situation. They were wrong. When the first guard rounded the bend, Morrison moved, silent, efficient. The second never made a sound. The prisoner stumbled as the grip on his arm loosened. He sagged, nearly falling. Maya was there instantly. Her hands supported weight without thinking. Muscle memory guided her assessment even as emotion threatened to intrude. He was thinner, older, but unmistakable. "Easy," she whispered in English. "I've got you." His head lifted slightly. Confusion flickered. "Who?" "Don't talk," she said gently. "Just breathe." The remaining guards reacted too late. Within seconds, the tunnel was quiet again. Maya knelt, checking circulation, injuries, signs of infection. Her focus narrowed. Training asserted itself, pushing memory aside without erasing it. "You're going to feel dizzy," she told him softly. "That's normal, stay with me." His eyes searched her face. "Maya," he croaked. Her chest tightened. "Yes." Recognition dawned slowly, painfully. You didn't leave," he said. The words hit her harder than any accusation ever could have. "I came back," she replied. Above them, the distraction detonated in controlled chaos. Shouts, running, weapons firing in the wrong direction. Morrison keyed the comms. "Move." They did. Maya supported Kim through the tunnel, adjusting her pace to his weakened state. She felt every uneven step, every flinch of pain. Her mind cataloged injuries while her heart fought to stay present. This was what competence felt like. Not dramatic, not loud. Just enough. At the extraction point, daylight spilled in like a promise. The helicopter's rotors thundered overhead. As they lifted off, Kim's grip tightened on her sleeve. "I thought I was dead," he whispered, "for years." She swallowed. "You were." Neither was she. As the ground fell away, Maya looked down at the compound one last time. It shrank, lost its power, became just another place. The past didn't disappear, but it loosened its hold. Sometimes redemption isn't about erasing mistakes. It's about carrying them carefully, so no one else has to. What do you do when the war finally gives something back? The helicopter's interior was louder than the battlefield, but Maya barely noticed. Her world had narrowed again, not from fear this time, but from focus. Sergeant Kim lay strapped to the deck, eyes half closed, chest rising in shallow, uneven rhythm. An IV line ran from his arm to a fluid bag swaying gently with the aircraft's movement. She knelt beside him, one knee planted, one hand steady against his shoulder. "You're safe," she said, not because he needed reassurance, but because she did. Kim blinked slowly, the effort visible. Years of captivity had carved themselves into him in ways no scan could measure. Malnutrition, old fractures, the subtle stiffness of someone who'd learned to move carefully in confined spaces. But he was alive. That fact still felt fragile. Morrison watched her work from across the cabin. He'd seen medics operate under pressure before, but there was something different about Maya now. The tension that had followed her since the briefing was gone. In its place was a quiet authority, not borrowed from rank or reputation, but earned through confrontation. She checked Kim's vitals again, adjusted the line, monitored his breathing. 5 years, Kim murmured suddenly, eyes opening just enough to find her face. I thought you tried. The words hung between them. I did, she said simply. I never stopped. He nodded faintly, as if that confirmed something he'd suspected all along. When they reached base, the transition was seamless. Stretcher teams, surgeons, bright lights replacing the dim safety of the helicopter. Maya handed Kim over with precise reports, every detail delivered cleanly, without hesitation. Only when he disappeared behind surgical doors did she feel the weight return. Not crushing, just real. She stepped outside and sat on a concrete step, helmet resting beside her. The desert air felt different now, less hostile, less personal. Torres joined her, offering a canteen. She accepted it without comment. You okay? He asked. She took a slow drink before answering, I don't know yet. That was the most honest response she had. Later, alone in the medical tent, Maya cleaned her instruments again. The routine grounded her, always had, but this time it wasn't driven by anxiety, it was gratitude. She thought about the woman she'd been 5 years ago, standing in smoke and confusion, believing that trying and failing were the same thing. They weren't. Failure was refusing to learn, refusing to return. She had done neither. Morrison stopped by before nightfall. Kim made it through surgery, he said. Stable, weak but stable. Maya closed her eyes briefly, let the information settle. Thank you, she said. He shook his head. You don't owe me that. No, she agreed, but I needed to hear it. After he left, she pulled the old photograph from her gear, studied it one last time. The faces no longer accused her, they simply watched. She placed it back where it belonged. Some debts aren't paid in full, but they can be honored, through care, through presence, through staying when it would be easier to disappear. When the noise finally faded, who was she without the weight of yesterday? The base settled into its familiar rhythm within hours. Radios crackled, generators hummed. Life resumed with the quiet insistence of routine. Missions didn't pause for meaning. They never had. Maya stood alone at the edge of the perimeter as dusk folded itself over the desert. The sky burned briefly, then softened, colors bleeding into one another the way memories do when they lose their sharpest edges. For the first time in years, she wasn't replaying anything. No explosions looping behind her eyes, no faces frozen at the moment of loss, just wind, sand, breath moving in and out of her chest without resistance. She hadn't realized how rare that was. Sergeant Kim remained in recovery. The doctors were careful with their optimism, but the facts were undeniable. He was alive. He would heal, slowly, painfully, but forward. That knowledge didn't erase the past. It reframed it. Maya understood now that guilt had been a language she used when she didn't yet have the words for growth. She had punished herself because punishment felt active, productive. It gave shape to pain. But pain, she was learning, didn't ask for repayment. It asked for honesty. Williams found her as the sun dipped fully below the horizon. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside her, watching the dark take over. You did good today, he said eventually. She shook her head. I did my job. He considered that. That's what doing good looks like. She let the words settle without deflecting them. Later, in the quiet of the medical tent, Maya prepared for the next mission. Not because one was scheduled, but because readiness was a form of respect. For herself, for the people who would rely on her. She paused over her kit, then stopped. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to recheck everything twice. She smiled small and private. Before turning in, she visited Kim. He slept heavily, a deep, restorative rest earned the hard way. Machines beeped softly around him, indifferent but necessary. She stood there for a moment, then spoke quietly. "I'm still here," she said. "Not because I owe you, because this is who I am." And she meant it. As she walked back into the night, Maya felt something shift, not closure, but continuity. The understanding that strength didn't come from silence alone. It came from choosing when to speak. Some stories end with forgiveness. Others end with understanding. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.